Hi, Mrs. Rain.
Hi, Mr. Rain. And hello, everyone. God is good all the time. And we're going to talk today about financial preparedness. Now, people are probably going to be wondering, well, what's the difference between this and a couple of the other financial related ones that we've done? Well, we did have a collaboration video we did about how we got out of debt, and we went over most of the ways that we got ourselves out of debt. And I'll go ahead and post that video right up here, and that was the one we did with Living Traditions Homestead. So make sure you also go check out their video.
Kevin and Sarah over there.
Yeah. And then we also did a video that's a part of this same series that is budgeting for prepping, and that is just setting aside a budget. What's the best way to budget your money in order to be able to get the things you want for your preps, especially when you're talking about big things like saving up for, you know, a country living grain mill, or maybe solar panels, or whatever it is, you know, a generator of some sort that you feel that you need. And but the difference between those videos and this is strictly about how to just prepare yourself financially all the way around. I shouldn't say strictly, it's more kind of, it's actually a little bit more general than that, so it's going to cover a few more things.
And that could even tie into getting more canning jars or containers of sorts to actually store for long term some of the preparations that you have, you know, that you prepare, that you plan to acquire in the future and part of your budgeting.
Right. So, and hopefully we won't have chickens interrupting us today, like our last talk video, that one chicken that was doing her egg song all day long without laying an egg. I finally figured out what her problem was, is that I had the door open so to the coop so it can air out, and she's the only chicken that doesn't like the door open when she's in there laying an egg. She likes her privacy. So I made sure it was shut this time. So anyway, but now we got doggies interrupting us. One of the things that I haven't talked about yet in the other financial related videos is,
come here, buddy,
when it comes to your budget, and this is where I specifically think of financial preparedness, and that is, first off and foremost, is getting yourself out of debt. Getting out of debt being the first thing you need to really focus on when you're trying to be financially prepared. It doesn't mean it's the only thing you're going to be focusing on during that time of getting out of debt, but it should be really at the top of your list. And then these other things should fall right along. Now, we did pretty much all of these things I'm going to talk about at the same time: getting out of debt, and then the next thing is that getting ahead on your bills. So when we first started paying off the house, one of the first things we did was get payments ahead on the house, so that even though we wanted to get the principal paid off right away, we also wanted to make sure we were payments ahead in case a hardship hit at any time in any month. We knew that if we could skip a house payment, we were good to go. So that was one of the things that we did along the way, and we got like 2 years ahead on our house payment before we started really digging in and just putting money on principal. And that was really just having that there and knowing that we were so many payments ahead was very, it was an insurance that was of its own. It was an insurance that paid for itself even if it was never needed, and it was very reassuring.
Right, and I'm not sure if we mentioned it, and I think we actually, we could have mentioned it in that other video, but though what we did is we consolidated the loans on the house, got the payments down low. We got a longer term loan, and we got the payments down to where they were small and manageable.
Right.
Not that we couldn't manage the payments that we had before, but what we wanted to do so we could budget for, you know, for different things, we got that payment as small as we can get it, just in case we did have hardships. So that was a preparation in itself. But you know, because we did that, we were able to put more on the house get payments further ahead, where we were like 2 years
Right.
ahead on the payments,
Yeah.
right?
And it was actually a refinance, not a consolidation at that time.
Oh,
we had,
right,
yeah,
right.
we consolidated before, years before we consolidated a couple other loans that we had into one, into the house loan, and then brought our payments down that way. And then on the last thing that we did before we paid off the house was to refinance, because at the time that was the lowest interest rate we had seen in a long time. So it was kind of a double thing. We lowered our interest rate and brought our payments down to half what they were, to make
Right.
it even easier to pay a couple of payments at a time, and or put more money onto the principal of the house. And so look at those kind of things when you're looking at both financial preparedness and getting out of debt. Look at what your interest rates are, and it might be worth it to refi, even if you've got to do like a whole, you got to pay all these closing costs and all this whatever
Right, your
stuff.
closing costs, could be, $6,000-8,000 depending on what your loan is. But taking that step out and looking at your debt to income, get that debt, knock that debt down as fast as you can, get your payments down, manageable, very manageable. The key thing is to get those smallest bills paid off first. And if you have a difficulty with credit cards and different things like that, just get rid of those things. Just get
Yes.
rid of your credit cards. We got down to 1 or 2 credit cards. The bank kept sending us, just kept upping our
Credit limit.
our credit limit, and we called them up and said, hey, no, we don't want
Bring
this.
it back down.
And they every year or so like that, they would keep doing that to
Yeah.
us, because we were getting to the point where we were getting rid of this bill, getting rid of that payment. We got the house payment down to next to nothing, relatively speaking for this area, but and that really freed up it actually, the way I looked at it, it was like, knocking our house payment in half was like getting another raise. So,
Yep.
in order to, if that extra money that we actually put down on the down payment, put down on closing costs, that's all behind us now. And now all we have is that payment. Now we can focus on the extra money that we were saving, that we were not putting on a payment, we could put into our preparations,
Right.
put into our future kitty fund for, let's say, a new roof, or it all goes into one fund, but that fund is there like an insurance policy.
The refinancing is a really good way for financial preparedness for several reasons. One, it'll help you in being able to get payments ahead. So if tragedy strikes of any kind, at least you've got X amount of months that you don't even have to make a house payment. Mm-hmm. Also, if your payments are really low, maybe money's tight, but it's like, okay, well, I can get by with just paying this really low. I can afford this really low house
We
payment.
still have to pay our rent to our king and our governor.
Yeah, he's talking about property taxes. And anyone who follows me on Facebook will know just how I feel about that. So,
Anyway, did I derail you yet, Mom?
yes. So don't get me on that soapbox. But then of course the other thing is just the ability to, like he said, to free yourself up monetarily so that you can pour that money into either other preps, making, or doing whatever it is you need to do with that extra quote unquote money. But again, get out of debt first. Now, I want to talk a bit about the credit card thing since he brought it up. We do have one credit card, well, not counting our fuel card, but I almost don't even think about that because I don't think of it as a credit card. It's just we use it at a specific fuel station because of it's you can only use cards at that one. And if we travel, it's like the Pacific Pride, CFN, all that kind of
Right.
stuff, so that those are usually more readily available in places where regular gas stations may not. So we use that, but we always pay it off as soon as the bill comes in, which sometimes we only get a bill like maybe once
Right.
every other month or so.
That's where we get our ethanol free gas for storage, and so
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
get that every now and then to supplement our preparations.
Yeah. And then the other credit card we have is just a basic Visa card through our bank. And I'm going to bring this up because a lot of people say, well, get rid of your credit cards. Well, if you have a problem with credit cards and you cannot control yourself when it comes to those, then yes, you need to get rid of them. However,
Heidi, she'll run me over to get to the computer. If we use the credit card for anything, she'll actually run me over to get to the computer so she can pay it off.
Yep.
Soon after
Never
we
carry
use
a balance.
We always zero out the credit card, keep it at zero. We're always very mindful of what we have out there as
Right.
far as debts are concerned. or
always,
what we
every
owe.
day, write
Yeah, we
everything
always-
down.
Yeah. Oh,
Yep.
Yeah. Owe no man anything.
Yeah, so the credit cards we have them or the credit card, that one card, we have it for a couple of reasons. And one is for ease of use, we can order anything we want online. We can have that handy and use it wherever we go. And also because we earn a percentage. And so
Right.
we have never paid a single cent on interest on this credit card, and we've had it for I don't know how many years now, but we've earned hundreds and hundreds of dollars by using that for almost every purchase, even locally, instead of going and paying cash, which I highly suggest, especially if you don't have control over your credit card, use cash instead. But because we have really good control with our credit card, we use that to buy groceries, gas, anything we need. And then, like he said, I pay it off. As soon as it's shows up on there, I pay it off. I check it almost every day. Is that on there yet? Okay, good. Pay it off.
Immediately, if not
Yep.
sooner.
And I've already budgeted the money for those items anyway. I've already made sure that money is there in the bank before we even make the charges. So that's really important.
Right.
Now, so credit cards can be useful and they can actually help you earn money if you use them right and you know how to do it. So anyway, on to the other thing I really want to talk about financial preparedness is to get ahead on other bills as well. Some people may not think about some of these smaller things. Let's say if you're like us, you're still on city water, you're still on city power, start paying ahead. If you have a bill that's $25, $40 for water, pay $50 or $80 or whatever. Get yourself several months ahead. Right now we are about, obviously you have to kind of estimate what you think your bills are going to be roughly through the year. And going by that estimate, we are currently 6 months ahead on water and 6 months ahead on our power. And yes, we have the solar power, which obviously makes it easier for us to be able to get farther ahead
Right.
on our public power. But I always try to keep it that way. I always try to keep 6 months ahead at least on both of these bills. That way, if something tragic happens financially and we can't afford to pay it, well, we're covered for 6 months. We know that for sure. Or we can even just pay a real minimal payment just to kind of keep it afloat so we don't get behind either. But anyway, that's one thing I highly recommend. You can also do this if you have, let's say, we can't really do this so much with our cell phones now the way they are, but when we were with Verizon, where we were just a regular, constant, get a bill every month, I was paying ahead on that when we were with Verizon. I also pay ahead on our internet bill because that's important. We need the internet for our business. We
Right.
have to have it, so it is a very important bill. And then again, going back to, and that goes with anything. Think of any we don't have a whole lot of real regular bills because we just don't have a lot of overhead being debt free, but you're going to have your usual things. So let's say groceries, for instance. Obviously, if you're into preparedness, you should have some food storage. Now, financial preparedness could be, going back to some of our other videos, like our very first one on food storage, your method of financial preparedness could be buying that food now at today's prices or even yesterday's prices if it's on a really good sale, and putting it away, whether it be dehydrating it, canning it, vacuum sealing it, however it is that you're going to put that particular thing away, freezing it. And so now you've got it in, it's still a financial form of preparedness, because as it is now, we're so far ahead, we have so much food put away for us that we could survive quite nicely off of what we have for quite a while. And I don't even know. I think the last time we went to the grocery store was probably 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I do get some things online, but as far as just regular groceries go, it's been several weeks since we've even had to go.
Right.
And it's just, and that just makes life easier too, not having to run to the store every single day or even a couple times a week. And it saves on fuel and it saves on time.
Right.
And I mean, these are things that are very, very important, especially if you're as busy as we are. Time is literally money, and we got to find ways to conserve that time. So
Right.
being financially prepared, being prepared in your food stores, being prepared in other ways is going to save you so much time down the road. I can just go shopping in my little home grocery store instead of having to run down to the store to get whatever it is I need. Pay ahead on all the bills that you can, even if it's only paying $5 ahead on each bill. Over time, if you do that each month, over time that $5 is eventually going to get you a whole month ahead. Just doing what you can, or even just pick one of those bills, whichever one you think is the most important to have. If a financial crisis hits,
Right.
then just focus on that one. If having public power is incredibly important to you, then keep paying ahead on that. If having your cell phones is incredibly important, keep paying ahead on that.
Well, also think about if you can do without. Some people can't do without electric power, maybe because they're on some sort of maybe they're on oxygen or some facet of life that
Yeah.
requires some sort of a power source. We have our solar. Well, if we didn't have our solar, we had something happened to that, we could survive without it. We always try to think ahead. Well, what if we don't have this?
Yep.
What if we don't have that? And keep on going down the line. Well, people were surviving without electricity for thousands of years, and water not so much. You gotta have water, you gotta have food, you gotta have shelter.
Yep.
Those 3 things, and oxygen, obviously.
Air.
But think of those 4 things, and obviously we have air. But the water and the food and the shelter, those 3 things right there, you really need to secure. And think of ways, okay, well, if I don't have the power, what can I live without it? Well, if you can live without something, it all depends on how bad you want to get that goal. Get that financial freedom, and cut back on some of the food, cut back on some of the power, cut back on some of the things that you can do without, and if you're renting, think about, well, gosh, this is a nice place, but maybe I can do just as good in a smaller place just to save money, so you can pay ahead on your bills. Those are some things to consider. We live in a world. We live in the United States, especially. We live in an abundance, and a lot of times we can live with a lot less. And me and Mrs. Rain have been practicing that over the years, and we are steadily always looking at our finances, always thinking about what we can cut back on and how we can do better in the realms of saving, setting aside, repurposing. All of these things are so, if you save a few cents there, you save a few dollars over there, and you look at the end of the month and it really adds up.
Yep, it really does. And it makes a huge difference. And I know it will seem like, that $2 or that $5 here and there that you might be putting away might just seem like it's going to take you forever, but you might be surprised, especially if it's things like, and we've talked about this in other videos too, but it's hard not to say it again because it's so important. Things like, you know, if you're in a habit of spending $5, $6, $7 a day on a cup of fancy coffee, well, add that up and figure out, okay, $5, $6, $7 could buy you a whole bag of coffee beans that you can grind up and make a whole pot of coffee for yourself every day for at least a month, and take all that extra money that you would have spent daily on your fancy coffees and put that away. And just, I mean, even try it for a week and just see how much money you put away. And go, okay, wow, now I have this amount of money. I can either put it in savings, I can put it on the power bill, I can put it on the water bill, I can put it on the principal of the house, so that you are more financially prepared, or putting it towards buying another bag of beans or something. So,
well, I forgot to mention this, Heidi, is that, you know, part of that for, you know, the air, water, food, and shelter. Well, there's a fifth element in that. And the most important thing is to have your coffee. Always have your coffee. Years and years supply of coffee, so don't touch that.
Mr. Rain. We do have probably about 2 years worth of coffee beans stored up. I made sure of it, and I keep up on it.
There you go.
Organic coffee
Tip
beans.
of the day, survival food.
And yes, we cycle through. It's also important to be very organized when you do this stuff, because you got to be able to cycle through your stuff so it doesn't go bad. But
correct.
You can also check out our first video on food storage for that. So the other thing is, what about cash? Or what about other forms of savings? Well, first of all, I say don't put all your eggs in one basket. I think it's incredibly important, though, to have cash on hand. Have a good supply of cash on hand in some form that's easily liquidable. I know a lot of people are into investing in silver and gold, and that's great. I see the benefits of that. For us, we decided that we would rather have our investment, if we're for things that aren't cash related, be in things like food, fuel, etc. Things that can be used immediately, that we don't have to convert into cash or convert into something else. Now, we do have a little bit of silver that we keep on hand, but the reason why I have that is more so I can always have silver bars for making our colloidal silver. That's the main reason why I stocked up on a few silver bars. But
well, I like the taste of dried.
Like the taste of,
you know,
gold and silver.
I don't like the taste of gold and silver. Yeah, you probably know what I was going to say. But yeah, you know, we look at our food preps and things such as that as money spent and stored. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, and so it's I totally understand the logic of saving precious metals.
Right.
I really do, and I would never discourage anyone from doing that, because it is going to hold its value, unlike the dollar, which, you know, we've lost over 95% of the U.S. dollar has lost its value since 1913. That's a pretty good chunk. I think it's maybe 97 or 99% of it it's gone now, because it's not backed by gold anymore. But that's a whole nother topic.
Right.
But you have to decide for you, you know, do you want to invest in precious metals and other things? For us for us is just not the logical choice. And yes, we do understand in a financial collapse that cash, that paper money, is going to be worth little in a very short time. So
well, you got to think about what's going to be rare. What is going to be rare during a collapse? You know, if we get that far, if we actually have a collapse, if somebody's standing there with a, you know, radio flyer wagon full of gold, or, you know, a wheelbarrow full of grain or something like that, I think I'd be siding towards the grain, you know, because in the end of the day, when you get hungry, the food is the most important thing. What do we talk about? Shelter, water, and food.
a loaf of bread can buy a bag of gold.
Gold is not, gold and silver's not in there. And not to say that that's not important stuff, because that's another way to prepare But me and Mrs. Rain right now are, we're focused more on building up that Fort Knox of food right now. So.
And on a side note, as far as metals, I would store things like, I think we need to get some more of it, but things like copper wire. I think if you're gonna
goods,
usable metals that could also be converted into cash if needed, but is also very useful, like copper wire. We need that for a lot of things, and I even make colloidal copper with copper. So there's just so many useful things for copper and for silver. Gold, not that it's not useful, but it's a lot more of an expensive precious metal that, if you're looking at its actual tangible uses rather than cash or buying things, then, silver and copper would be the way I would go. But anyway, so for cash, back to what I wanted to say one more thing, is that what you will have to understand is for now, cash is king. And in a financial collapse, cash will be king for a short period of time. So you got to consider that too.
Until the food runs out.
Yeah. So I would be burning through the cash right away if a financial collapse happened.
Investing that in food.
Investing it in food and other things like that. Things that are absolutely necessary for your survival and your family's survival. But for now, that financial collapse, we've seen what's been happening in, throughout history. We know eventually, things are going to keep getting worse. It's not going to get better. And you may not see, they've been predicting these financial collapses for years, and it may happen all of a sudden. But what I see happening just by the trend is that's just going to be a consistent, slow decline rather than a quick. That's my personal opinion based on what I'm seeing through the history line. But it doesn't mean it's not going to happen. So you got to think of all the variables when it comes to that. But regardless, for right now, having that cash on hand is really important. For example, anything can happen where you're going to want X amount of dollars on hand. Now this isn't a serious thing, it's just what came to mind, and it was just cool that we were able to do this. But when we handed our other Toyota pickup down to our youngest son, we decided that was his first rig, we decided, man, we really missed having the Toyota pickup because it was really handy to have. And so we kind of, decided we were going to start keeping our eye out for another one someday. And then all of a sudden there was one available in great condition with a canopy and everything we wanted in a Toyota pickup. And it was an older model, the style that we prefer actually. And we had the cash right then and there to go buy it. It was a good deal too. And we could just go pay cash for it. We didn't have to get a loan, nothing like that. We just paid cash, and it was nice to be able to do that. And so
that cash, having that tangible item and no future payments or no future debt incurred with that, in my mind, was a lot better than going out and buying a new rig or something like that for $40,000. And
well, and on top of that, if you've got the cash to pay for it, especially if you're talking about a used rig, you got that money. You can much easier talk them down. Say, okay, well, I've got X amount of dollars in cash. Here you go. And that's what we did. So we got a really good, it was already a good price on that Toyota when we got it, and it was kind of surprising because it was such good shape. But we managed to talk them down even more because we had cold hard cash to hand them, and that cash is going to speak louder than anything else. So another good reason. And I mean, and that's not necessarily, we didn't absolutely need that truck.
No.
But it does use less fuel than our GMC. We like to leave our GMC parked and suspended on the insurance. And I've mentioned that before, that check into your insurance company on your auto. If you have a few rigs, maybe you only drive one or two of them regularly. The one that you don't drive very much, keep it suspended on your insurance. Whenever you need it, you can just call your insurance or email your insurance agent and just say, hey, I need the rig for the day And then when you're done, email them back and they'll take it back off. And you might have only paid $2 to insure it for that day, and that's it, if even that. And then the rest of the time, you can be saving anywhere from $50 to $100 per month by having that rig suspended.
Well, vehicles are an interesting thing too. It's like, okay, well, do you really need three vehicles? You know, we've got the Geo out there. It's got a bad battery in it, so we got to save up and buy a battery for it. Well, having the two other vehicles gives a little elasticity in our transportation. If we only had one rig, well, you might be able to save more money and put it into a rig fund and have it fixed readily. But
You still have to wait.
you still have to wait. But the nice thing about having at least an extra rig, and this is again towards the preps, you know, having good operating vehicles, you know, like for instance our GMC, we're going to have to get the tires replaced in that. So we're thinking ahead on that. But meanwhile, we can use the Toyota pickup, which has
It's the only one we
tires
don't
in it.
have suspended.
Right. And so there's a fine line between how much stuff do you actually get in store, and you know, because if you're really, really, really hardcore trying to save and trying to prep and trying to pay off that house, it might be better for you to get rid of all those superfluous rigs. Exactly. Thank you. And just go down to one good maintained vehicle that's reliable and get you there. But you know, once you get some of these other bills knocked down and paid off and get paid ahead on some of your utilities and such, then think about, okay, well, what happens that Toyota pickup, what happens if the engine blows up in it? Okay, we're going to be, you know, well, we could possibly go down there and just buy another vehicle, or we can lighten up that stress and, okay, now we're gonna drive the GMC. We're gonna put that back on insurance and drive that for a while and look around for a new engine or do some checking to see what our best options are. So it gives us a little bit more flexibility in how we pursue our next step in the realm of replacing that rig, getting rid of that rig, or upgrading.
Yeah, and we've had to do that quite a bit. Like with the Toyota, there was a video that we did, like it was one of the first long Mr. Rain videos that we did, where he had to totally replace
the wheel bearings and brakes.
Yeah, and it was a huge job. It took a very long time for it to get done.
For me to do, you know.
And
if it took it,
well, because it was a new thing for him to do. He had to learn about it first, and you know, he watched a lot of videos, he read a lot of stuff, and then jumped in there and did it. But at any rate, during that time, we had both the Geo and the GMC. So he had the Geo for going for commuting to work and back, and then the GMC was there for if I needed to go anywhere. I had a rig, and then the Toyota could just sit on suspension. And again, we weren't paying to have it fully insured. It's just a few dollars a month when you have it a rig suspended, really, and then when you're ready, once he had it all fixed and ready to go, we just call him up and say, let's reinstate the Toyota. And then we put the GMC back on suspension again. So and it's a good idea to switch them up every now and then anyway, but that's just one way you can do things to save money. And
it's hard to have a vehicle that's set too. So that's the rotation is a good thing to keep them all running. If you have a rig that's been sitting for a long time, it's a good idea to at least go out and start the engine and let it run for a little bit, because it's really hard, especially here in rain country, to let a rig just sit and not being started and used.
All right, so back to financial preparedness in particular. It's one of those. It's a very broad subject. So I know we
digress a lot.
Yeah, and it's hard. That's why it's hard to stay really on point, just because it all crosses over into all these many other areas, and I'm pretty sure we're leaving out some important things we wanted to say. I didn't take notes before we sat down, but I I brought this out so that I could take notes as we were talking in case something came to my mind. But anyway, so the two main things that I want to touch on again are that when it comes to financial preparedness, well, let's say three main things is getting out of debt. 2 is paying ahead on any and all bills that you possibly can, even if it's just a few dollars a month, or picking that one bill, the one thing that you feel that is the most important for you to have in a financial crisis, and getting ahead on that. And then having some cash on hand, and how much you decide to have on hand is entirely up to you. And before I forget, I personally don't trust the banks to store all, to put a bunch of cash in. However, that's going to have to be up to you. I believe in having your money as tangible as possible, because I believe if you don't have it, you don't have it. If you don't have it physically, you don't have it. If it's just in digital format, then it's not yours. It could go just like that. So I'm not saying don't do that, but just consider that when you start putting some cash away, how much cash do you think you're going to need to pay the bills for X amount of months, whatever time frame is set for you, and make sure you always have that much, plus a little extra for an emergency fund as well. Again, don't put all your eggs in one basket, and that goes for everything. We have you can have all these different investments and stuff, but the same applies to your cash. How are you going to, where are you going to put your cash? How are you going to keep it safe? I think that's really about it. And again, I'm sure that we forgot a few things, but we are always open to more comments and suggestions and ideas. Share with us how you financially prepare yourselves. How do you look at cash? How do you look at credit cards? You probably don't want to share with us your safe ways to store cash, but if you can, go ahead and share that with us. And anything else that applies that you think would be helpful for other people to learn from. We really appreciate your interaction and your input.
And that's the key thing too. Not just sharing with us, but there's a lot of people that go into the comments down below and they actually read those comments,
right,
because they glean information from y'all just as much as us, if not more. Yeah, so it's very interesting, the people that comment back and forth with us and with each other. And so let's keep that up. It's great. The interaction is just superb. We appreciate it when people come in and share us their thoughts. We don't know it all, and we know you don't know it all, but maybe some of you do. But we're learning right along with you. So thanks for watching the video.
Take care.
God bless.
Who is it? Who's interrupted us this time?